If you didn't catch the Oscars the other week, spoiler alert, Anora took home Best Picture. And here's the wild part. Every single frame was lit using Blackout. Today, we're switching it up. I get to interview Chris Hill, the chief lighting technician or gaffer of Anora. We're talking real workflows, real setups, and how Blackout helped bring an Oscar-winning film to life. Let's get into it. Chris Hill. So, nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Super cool. You were on the Oscar-winning film Anora. Massive achievement. I mean, that is like, I think a lot of us in film work on projects that we would consider big, we would consider small, we would consider cool. And to even get to that stage is one thing, but then to win it is just like a whole nother, like, that's epic. So congratulations. Very few people can say they've worked on, a Best Picture nominee, let alone winner.
It's beyond surreal. And I mean, not only that, but it also won Cannes, which is, I think someone posted a stat of it being like one of only 4 films to ever win Cannes and
yes,
the Best Picture, which is like beyond. That's like crazy beyond.
Epic win. Congratulations. That's super exciting. Obviously, we want to dive into like what that was like. But before we do that, tell us who you are and what is your story?
I'm Chris Hill. I grew up in a super small town in Northeast Missouri, surrounded by like cow farms and cornfields. There really wasn't much to do or to be done. I spent a lot of time either driving up and down like the one main road we had, or I would go to the movie theater a lot. And then by the time I graduated high school in 2001, I didn't really have any plans on what I wanted to do. I was a manager at a Wendy's. I kind of hired all my friends. So I kind of didn't have any big plans. And I was just like, well, this is kind of fun. Rent's super cheap. I would go to the movies. I would just hang out. But one by one, like all my friends started moving away and like starting their own lives and their own journeys. And I looked around and I was surrounded by people that I didn't really know anymore. And I was like, well, I don't really want this to be how it goes down. And so randomly enough, I was on the internet and I had found a posting for a Czechoslovakian circus that was looking for splinterheads and talkers, which splinterheads are the ones that put up all the tents and everything else like that. And the talkers are the ones that are just outside trying to get people in. And I had planned that was going to be what I was going to do. I made that choice that I was going to get a passport. I was going to fly over and I was going to start that aspect.
Wow.
So I was in the middle of getting everything together and figuring it all out. And then unfortunately my mom got sick. And in that time period, which was like 2002-ish, cell phones really weren't overly reliable, especially when it comes to like overseas types aspect. So I kind of just hung up that idea, which wasn't really a dream. It was just like a harebrained scheme that I thought of at like 18, 19. And I decided that, I always wanted to do something that was creative, and I loved music, but I was a horrible musician. I couldn't play anything. I couldn't sing. So next to me was like the storytelling aspect in films. So I moved down to Florida, which was close enough from Missouri that I could get home fast if I needed to. Cell service was fine. And I wanted to become a DP. So I started working and doing small gigs here and there, and I started DPing these little indie films on like the XL2S and the Panasonic P2 cameras and stuff like that. And I was like, after about 2 features and a couple shorts, I was like, this is horrible. I don't want to DP. Like, if you're on call 24 hours a day, you're the first person that they blame for everything if anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
And in the end, you really don't get that much credit. I mean, I feel like nowadays you do way more than back then, but even now, I mean, it's probably just because I'm looking at who the DPs are, so I get more credit than what the normal layman does.
Right.
But it was like, for the amount of headache you got, to me, it wasn't really worth it. So I started focusing more on the lighting side of everything and creating that storytelling through light and less through camera aspects.
That's pretty epic, like shift in just a few years, right? I mean, so that was from like 2001 to when did you start shooting? I
started in the industry like the end of 2003.
Wow.
I'm hitting like my 22nd year in the industry this year.
Holy smokes, that's amazing. So you got out of high school. You had this crazy plan. You ended up DPing a couple things, realizing you didn't like that, got into lighting, and now take us on your journey. Like, where were you at this point?
I was in Central Florida. I was doing a lot of jobs in like Tampa area and then like also in like West Palm Beach area. Okay. So I kind of I ended up just moving down to South Florida and focusing more on that. I was doing a lot of smaller indies, like 500,000 and under type films, which unfortunately just don't really exist anymore today. But I was doing a lot of those, and I was doing a lot of grip actually, and I kind of started more organizing over to electric. And then I met a gaffer named Rusty Pouch that ended up getting me on my first like official union job. And that was like the end of this like teen raunchy comedy called Sex Drive. And then right after that, luckily a lot of that crew went over, and I was able to go straight onto that to Marley and Me. And I worked with Jeff Burrell on that. And that was like seeing it at a bigger scale, which was really cool. And seeing that kind of artistry and like how they were, because it was Florian Bauhaus was the cinematographer on it. So that was a lot of fun. And then from there, I started doing a lot of TV down in South Florida. It was mostly TV.
But like on Marley and Me, you were gripping at that time?
I was an electric. I was the set electric. Yeah.
Okay. So you played the gamut. You were all over the place.
I mean, Florida is a join local. Right. So a lot of people are able to kind of jump back and forth to a certain amount. And I'm really glad that I came up in a state that's that way, because it really helped me understand lighting a lot more as well, and helps me to, explain what I want to accomplish to people too, because I've done both.
Right.
But then, I mean, the main thing is South Florida is mostly known for, our TV shows. Like we did Burn Notice, we had like Bloodline, The Glades, we did Ballers for a season or two. And then like Bad Monkey was the one we just did like a couple years ago for Apple TV that was fully ran on Blackout for all location. Wow. And then when we were on stage, we had an ETC board that ran all the stage lights, but I still ran everything on Blackout from the truck package unless it needed to be connected for any reason.
That's epic. So before you get into that, so you're still grip electric on films, and obviously you have a transition into lighting programming and gaffing. No.
I mean, So I like after Marley and Me, I'd been doing some smaller gaffing for like infomercial type stuff and aspects of that. But I also wanted to just really learn. And I felt like the best way to learn was working with as many gaffers and DPs that were obviously way better than I was, and taking those good parts. Right. So learning from the small indies up to the big budgets really helped to kind of understand how to do things at any level. And then it wasn't really lighting control aspects didn't really come into my foray until I was doing this small little indie outside of Massachusetts called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, which is quite a mouthful. But the cinematographer on that, I came in to gaff, and the cinematographer on that, Alex Vindler, he had found out that the Airy Sky panels, which had just come out at the time, worked as their own DMX nodes. Yeah. So we had figured out a way that I actually have one here to show, that if we take these little TP links that are just Wi-Fi extenders. And we plug in through the Ethernet, which should fit exactly in the little harness of the sky panel bail.
Yeah.
That we could take that and then we could run one as a master, run the other as slaves. And then we use the free, cheap little, I mean, cheap as in free, Osram app and ran everything XY. And we'd had to do the calculators of the 0.823 or whatever it was back in those days where Aries dim curve was different on the XY then, so it couldn't be straight XY. You had to take it like times 0.8 something. But it was the only way for us to be able to really match like streetlights and aspects like that were on the jobs, because we didn't have condors, we didn't have anything else like that. It was a very small budget. So we started working in that aspect and working, you know, down and dirty in that way.
Dude, that is so crafty. And I think a lot of people to this day don't realize that like most lights now have nodes in them where you can do things like that. I thought you were going to say you were going to like web log into the sky panel remote and control, you know, each one that way or whatever, just by knowing the IP. And I was like, dude, that is like so advanced.
No. That's always, and it still is my weakest link is web protocol stuff. You know, it's like, it's so bad. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to make friends because of my inability to know the web portal stuff, you know, like Adam Namp, who made the AKS, the Adam Namp systems, you know, like I would call him all the time just as like troubleshooting. And luckily he just kind of would hold my hand through everything and be like, you can't do it that way, dude. That's not how it works. And I'm like, but I just want to turn it on.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to control it. And he's like, you know, you got to do this, this, or this. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much, like, it's all money. I don't understand why everything has to be so expensive. And still to this day, I'm very anti 512 channel DMX. I don't think there's any reason to have it, especially when everything can be Wi-Fi signal based. The universe is only make the big DMX people rich, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of big Hollywood, it's the big DMX. There's no reason for universes anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just like, it's like a frustrating limitation of our industry that has just been so ingrained in everybody that to like rip DMX out and replace it with like a new protocol, dude, you're gonna have to kill people. I mean, at this point. No, but that's amazing. I mean, that is like really crafty, especially for that time. It was like what, when did it come out? 2014, you know? I mean, it was really early. Maybe it was slightly later than that, 2014, 2015. But I mean, that is absolutely wild. That's super cool though. Okay, so you got a little taste of what lighting control was like.
Yeah, and then, you know, from there I kind of I'd kind of gotten like the basic iPad setup at that point in time. Like I splurged, I got an AKS and I got Luminaire, and that was kind of the thing. And but like the thing about Luminaire that was great was it was super easy to make effects. If you needed to do a chase, you needed to do a flicker effect, anything else like that was really simple, really easy to put together. And their customer service was actually pretty good. They had videos on every single thing humanly known. Like I don't know how they had time to make all the videos. But the thing that always kind of really was frustrating was not being able to grab multiple fixtures at the same time and having to kind of go through that clunky thing of like, okay, hang on.
Yeah. Swipe, find it, swipe, find it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was always a major limitation. And then from there, I went to do this feature in upstate New York called Old Man with that same cinematographer, Alex Vidler, that I had done the one with the TP links. And this one was all set in one cabin. So we had to do, everything had to be controlled because it needed to be done like a play. So like as things were going, I had to be able to control certain aspects. And then the entire crew was me, a key grip, and then I had a swing on certain days. So I had to be able to have a monitor and control everything that way. So at that point, I had we had Luminaire, and I controlled certain fixtures with Luminaire. And then I had a modified Frankenstein version of Mad Mapper from Steve Yedlin that he had written the code for.
And how did you get this?
Alex Vidler and Steve Yedlin are very close with
Okay.
like they'd worked, they kind of came up together and everything else like that.
Okay.
So having Steve Yedlin as your tech support is a very unique struggle and blessing at the same time. Because a lot of the times it would be like, you know, Steve, I just need to be able to warm it up or cool it down. And he's like, well, yeah, you just take it and you put it into this calculator that I invented only on an iPad app, and you put in these XY coordinates and you tell how much you want it to do, and you do this to that. And I was like, yeah, but he's going to want to do it like on the fly. And he's like, he shouldn't.
Right? Yeah.
He's like, he shouldn't. He should know what he wants to do. And I'm like, okay. Because you're not going to argue with Steve. Like, you're not going to win. Like, that's not going to happen. So it was a very unique experience. It was great. I learned a lot about MIDI control through that aspect, because Mad Mapper is seriously MIDI based and everything else like that. So that was a big way to kind of understand like what lighting control can do. But I was still kind of looking for that in between system that wasn't as complicated as Mad Mapper, not as simplistic as Luminaire.
Right.
And then that's whenever I met Matt Clan on Bad Boys 3.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
Matt was the board op on Bad Boys 3 for the Miami unit. I'm not sure if he did the whole thing or just Miami.
Yeah.
And we were doing a big thing down on Collins Avenue, picturesque South Beach, same as it always is.
Yeah.
Sky panels on every rooftop down Collins Ave. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, all right, like we're gonna dim down those, we're gonna move those. And instead of having this big board, he just had this iPad. And I was like, he's not using Luminaire. There's no way. And he goes pop, 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 and all of them go down and all of them change color. And I was like, how the hell did he do that? And I went over there and I was like, how did you do that? And he's like, oh yeah, this is like the new stuff right here. This is the hot new stuff. You don't know about this yet. And I was like, this is kind of that missing link. You know, that was the thing of like, not as complicated as Mad Mapper. You don't have to know code. You don't have to know these aspects, but not as simplistic and limiting as Luminaire was.
So here's a slight interesting connection for us now, because I also worked on Bad Boys 3, but I did not work on Bad Boys 3 in lighting. I was at that time still in drones, and that was one of my last projects, being a aerial drone cinematographer. I was only on the Atlanta unit, and we were shooting a lot of the second unit, like action sequences when they're like going through the tunnel and they're, doing their crazy ride with, Martin and the little, caddy right next to Will on the bike. And I remember going down there, and that's actually how I first met Nick Jones. I remember being like, oh, I gotta like talk to the lighting guy and like let him know about my app, It's just like, I wonder if they would be into it. And of course he was like running, an MA2, full size. He was like trucking around or something over there, and they had lights on condors everywhere. I mean, we were, we had helicopters, and it was just crazy. And I remember just being like, oh, thank God I'm not on the electrics. I mean, this looks brutal. It was like an epic shoot. I mean, they had lights everywhere. And, that was just like, it was fun. It was fun lighting because it was like colorful lights that you really got to splash the set with. And when you're doing like a big movie like that, you get to have a lot of fun. You get to see like how really good lighting takes place, and you have a lot of talent that you can play with. And so I thought that was super cool. But I remember running over to Nick Jones and being like, yo, dude, hey, I have this app, and like, I'm Jeff Brink, and like, check it out or whatever.
Yeah, the drone guys coming over and handing after the programmer.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to mix the world a little bit. You know what I mean? Friendly set. So no more, division. So dang. Okay. So Bad Boys 3, that's how you got hooked up, and you were doing second unit stuff. And I remember that iconic photo that you had snapped that was like, it looked amazing because you had like, an incredible background, but you had 3 iPads, and it was just like Luminaire, Blackout, and is the Stera app, right?
Yeah.
At the same time.
So what had happened was we had shot this whole wedding scene with Maclan. The whole Atlanta crew was there, and everything was going, but it was a rainy, cloudy day, and we shot it anyway, as you always do. Yeah. But then, like 2-3 months later, they're like, nah, we're coming back. We're shooting it again. We don't like it. We've got all the money in the world. We're going to make sure that we do it right. And by then everybody had gone to different jobs. So they're like, we're just going to do a couple quick things. No big deal. It's the wedding scene. Like it's a couple of Skype. You know what, Chris, you do it. Like you're going to be the Miami board op for that section, because like, what's the point? It's going to be a couple Sky panels, nothing, no big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Like I bought at the time, I bought the Airy Skylink because they wanted the ability to RDM. And at the time it was the only RDMable CRMX system.
Yeah.
And it's still my worst purchase I think I've ever bought in lighting, because it just never really lived up to its full potential on what it could do or anything else like that. It was always fighting its own signal from the Wi-Fi to the CRMX, because they were just built it too close. And so that was always, but that's another story. But anyway, last minute, they were like, on the last day, they're like, oh, we're going to recreate, we need to get inserts of what this whole big fire burning down inside of a mansion thing. So you're going to program, there's like, I think it was 25 or 35 Parkins into Mylar doing this fire gag. We're going to bring a Condor over top with 4 or 5 S60s. They're going to do lightning strikes. I want to have some Asteras doing this stuff here. And I'm looking at the local gaffer, who's Jim Pasquarelli, who's been, I work for him on all like the bigger jobs down here. He's like the Miami, like bigger gaffer guy. And he's always very understanding of my want to just play with new stuff. So he's always like, yeah, go ahead. Like, oh yeah, do this. And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, you got it. I'm just like, oh, great. So I pulled out Luminaire because I was like, I know I can make a fire effect with Luminaire. And then I built out the sky panels in mode 30 because I knew I could do the strobe hit and I could adjust the decay. So I was running with the Apple Pencil every time the lightning strike to hold down and be able to affect the decay.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to program anything like that. And they seemed to okay with it. I don't know if it ever made the movie or not, but
wow, that's crazy. I mean, dude, super crafty, like making it work.
Yeah.
You got to figure out a way to do it one way or the other. You can't tell them no. That's the thing.
No, but I remember looking at that photo that like showed up on my Instagram, and I'm like, this is such an amazing photo, because it was like, well framed and everything like this. And I'm like, I don't want to post it because it has like, my competitors in there, and it's just like, I want to take them down,
But that was the thing. There was those like growing pains on figuring out how to be stable, how to be, get to the effects engines. I mean, because I don't know if version 1 even had an effects engine. Did it originally? I don't think it did on the very first one.
It's really funny that you asked me this, because you'd think I would know, but it's been such a long time that I don't actually remember. Yeah, sometime not too much later, I want to say, because I knew that had to come, because I was like, listen, people on film sets are going to want to be able to like control lights, put them at certain intensities, and then run a fire effect. And we have to be able to do a fire effect and a chase. Like those were my like two goals that we had to get out. So yeah, so tell me about that, the good and the bad of using Blackout. I mean, like, again, you've been with me since the very beginning. So you picked it up right away. You utilized what it could do in certain capacities, but you were still using Luminaire alongside it. So how did that transition go? Like, when did you start using, Blackout fully, and what were the issues?
Well, I mean, I think, you know more than anyone else about the ups and downs, because I think how many times did you have to start from scratch? Like 2 or 3 different times? Dude,
like really I think 5. I think 5 different times. Yeah, it was rough. Yeah.
Which hinders your ability to kind of continue it along and meet the demands of those other aspects. So I know for a while what I was doing is I was building shows out on both. I would build a show out on Luminaire, and I would build a show out on Blackout, so it always had me in that back pocket. I always had it in the back pocket in case I needed to do some kind of an effect. I could just jump over to Luminaire and kind of create it that way. And then, again, it goes back to like Jim Pasquarelli, the gaffer that I work for a lot on the TV shows, just allowing me the option to do it, and being like, yeah, sure, let's try out a new app, let's try out these things, and being open enough to be like, no, we're going to control it from the head all the time, or no, we need to make sure that we have a hog for, you know, a day exterior or something like that.
Right.
And also, honestly, Blackout and Luminaire and iPads in general
Yeah.
was my crutch on not having to learn as much on the programming side, because I can always say, well, it's an iPad. What do you want from me?
Right.
You know, as opposed to like if it's a hog 4, there's no question. You better be able to do any possible thing they have, you know.
And you never thought to jump at that point and to be like, okay, I just got to learn hog and do it. You know, these guys are taking too long.
Well, I really love being on set. Like my big thing is I love being the guy, the go-to guy that's bringing the stuff onto set, that's helping focus it. And by using Blackout and Luminaire, and then by building this cart eventually that has its own battery, has everything, I'm able to wheel around wherever I want to go and be right there in the action and able to jump in and do tweaks and come back and then like make changes as we go. Whereas a board would have made me at the board, like you're there. You can't leave. You're in your own little dark corner of the stage or wherever you are. You're not really as much an integral part in the creation by hands. You know, you are absolutely by like the control aspect, but like the hands-on aspect kind of gets taken away. And I didn't love that for me. So I never really jumped into that aspect because I felt like I would then get held in to a board op position, which would have been great. It would have been great money. It would have been always working. You know, you always need board ops, especially now.
Yeah.
But it definitely would have taken me out of the rotation of being able to be hands-on on set.
Right. And that's cool because, like, you know, you want to see lighting develop. You want to see that image form. That's like the movie magic, right? And you can see all the tricks on set. When you're behind a console on a stage, you know, like I remember being on The Americans and I was just learning ETC at the time, first into Blackout. I was like, I need to get this on set. You know, that was kind of my initial idea for it. And it was just like, I can't see anything that's going on. You know, it's like, oh, can you take channel, you know, 101 to 30%, type it in, no confirmation. It's just like, did it go? Like, I don't even know. I don't even know if it went. And that's just a level, you know, and imagine trying to program a fire effect they can't see behind a wall, you know? It was crazy. So that's exciting. Yeah, great respect for like the on-set technicians because, you know, you guys make it happen. And I was there. I loved that when I was doing that. And that's, again, that's the whole reason for me doing Blackout. And when I run with Blackout on set, I usually have it, you know, on some kind of sling or shoulder thing. And I'm just going around because I love it. I love bringing lights into set, setting them up. I can like, you know, plug in the DMX or the CRMX, you know, satellite or whatever I need to do in order to like make sure that that's up. And then, you know, I test it and do it and then it's seamless, you know what I mean? And I think that's part of like the game, at least in film lighting control, is it's just that like, how do you keep that flow going, that workflow efficiency? How do you not add to the time in the day? And that's always what's on the, you know, the call sheet reports is just like, okay, what stopped us now? The generator went down for an hour. Shame on you guys. You know, how are you going to fix this? It's like, forget about makeup, which took 4 hours to, you know, bring, you know, a number one to set.
Right.
I'm sorry that the lighting went down for 15 seconds and that had to go on the call sheet report. But yeah, I mean, that was my whole thing. That's super exciting. I'm glad that like that you stuck with it and you stuck with Blackout to this time because I hope you have seen the fruits of the labor now, having gone through all those pain points.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that was, and now I bother Ian more than I bother you now. It's like I still bother you guys, but I just deal with Ian. So I'm like, just got stuff going on. Ian will answer me fast, but I did do like. I had a job where they couldn't get mimics or anything else like that, and we had to kind of mimic an effect. And so I got Mad Mapper out, and I did like the whole merge, all that kind of stuff to make it work. And I couldn't make it work. And then it was, I guess it was because of a TP-Link router or something. There was like all these like little things that you don't know until you get ready to get in there and try. But I mean, that's the thing that's great about you guys is that you are a support system at the same time. You're not just buying a product, you're buying, you know, the ability to have conversations with real technicians that are out there that have done it and that aren't in a shop in the Netherlands or wherever like giving you a form reply of, have you tried this this first, and then you have to reply, and then you have to wait, but I mean, and then also, I'm sure the amount of like the ability to have like a Facebook group like you have helps a lot, because then it becomes like a mind hive where everybody's there to help,
Yeah. And I love what the Blackout Facebook group has become, because it's more than just Blackout. And I try to encourage that too. It's just that it's like whatever set things that you want to deal with that are relevant, you know what I mean? I love to chat about, because I think it's just like a general, like, help each other out. And I know there's other forums out there for these things now, but I think Blackout kind of has a special community, because I think in general, everyone in the Facebook group is like so willing to like help each other out and, give good advice and how to do things. But yeah, I mean, definitely the whole support thing has been a little bit of an issue, as you know, too, because it was just me for such a long time. And like, I would just get flooded with so many things. And the thing is, like, you're tracking it from like, this guy texted me, this guy Facebook messaged me on my personal account, this guy messaged me on, Blackout's account, and I have an Instagram. And it's just like, you have so many different mediums, and you're just like, wait a minute, I was going to get back to this guy. Which one was he on? Just even there, And meanwhile, I'm on set. You know what I mean? I'm on set, like dealing with my own things or whatever. It's like, oh, this guy has a troubleshooting thing. So I'd have to troubleshoot daily, every single minute. If I wasn't even doing it on my own set, it's definitely been wild. And because of that, I think, yeah, it's like, it's not like a form thing. It's like literally, if you get a response from the help center, it's just like, dude, did you try this? It's like very casual, very like,
which makes it like very approachable. Like, you're not afraid to ask for help. Whereas like some of the other ones, you're like, well, man, this is going to take forever. It's going to be like a 3 email thing. Or some of the user groups that you go to, like, if you ask, it's like, what are you, like an idiot? Like, you shouldn't even have this equipment if you don't know how to use it, type thing.
Right.
Like, people completely forgetting that they were in this same position, years ago. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of Blackout, is even though it's gotten better and bigger, you still remember where you started from. And so that aspect really still plays out in your customer service aspects.
Cool. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, lighting control has gotten so wild so quickly. And like you said, like networking, it's like now you have to be like a full like IT network technician to be able to like do simple stuff on set, because everything is so complicated. You have to like know how to configure an entire IP schema for your network, for your nodes, for your, switches, even if you're using managed switches, and it just gets crazy, dude. So I totally like feel for that, for like the lighting industry has transformed so much. And the sad part of that is like our budget that producers like allow us has not grown like one bit, with it. And you hear about like, no offense to the LA guys, but you hear about the LA guys, winning that battle a lot better than at least us over here in New York. And I know different locals in different areas have their own, struggles and battles with it too. But I mean, like in New York here, it's just like ruthless, these producers, where it's just like, it's like, we need a programmer. What? Like, we'll still get that on, to shoot that I'm doing. And it's just like, what? Yeah. I mean, at this point in time, you need a programmer on every set, so it's just wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, down here, it's just now gotten to the point in Florida where they don't push back on just having like a wireless setup. Yeah. Like for the longest time, it was like, really, do you need to spend that $600? Like that seems like you don't really need that. Don't you have guys that can just do it on the back of the head, And it's just now getting to that point where they're like, okay, yeah, they don't question it. They don't push back.
So how did you get to the car? When did you decide to build that out?
So what I'd had before is I'd had one of the Matthews like slider stands.
Yeah.
And I'd put the big wheels, the big motherfucking wheels or whatever they call them, the Matthews ones, on that. And I had like a Tether Tools like shelf that I put on there, and I had like a little piece of wood that I mounted a router with, and my AKS. And then I had, at that point in time, I had the demo satellite that Adam Namp had So like the first satellite, the colors weren't matched, and I had Frankensteined it because it didn't have a lot of output. So I had taken it apart and I had taken off the Wi-Fi antenna and I had plugged that into the Timo 2 to give it a CRMX boost. So that way it was matching closer to the AKS and less than, than like the regular. And I ran it off of the Ego lawnmower batteries.
Oh, wow.
So I had like a little 150 watt inverter that I would just slide the Ego batteries on, and then that would power the router and top off the battery for the iPad and anything else like that.
That's pretty crafty. And
we did all of Bad Monkey that way. The TV show was all done that way. And then after Bad Monkey, I was like, you know what, I want to be. It was also frustrating tearing it down when we had company moves or anything, because I had to put all the antennas back in the cases, all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to make something that was more, it had to still stay mobile. That was the whole thing. Like I didn't want to be tethered to anything. So the sound guy on Bad Monkey had one of the NebTech carts from Galen NebTech. And I was like, man, this could really work for what we need to accomplish. Right. And I was looking into it and then I looked at the price and I was like, there's no way I can afford that. And because it's like $5-6 grand, I think, for that same size cart. Yeah. So I ended up going with the Pro-Aim, which worked. It's like I suggest anybody that, like I tell anyone that wants to get into their stuff, like have time, because it's going to get there and it's going to be, parts are going to be broken or missing. And you can only contact customer service through WhatsApp. It's only after 8 p.m. because they're in India. And then they're great. They'll send you whatever you want. Yeah. But it's a process. Like you need to have time to be able to kit it out. Don't expect it to like show up and then be ready to go in a couple days. Like it's got to take some time. But then I ended up working with Galen on a Netflix movie in Portland last year, and the owner of NebTech. And he just looked at my card. He's like, oh. But I was like, come on, man. Like, if you cut me a deal, I'll buy a NebTech one right now. So I'm still waiting on the deal. That's what I need next. I was like, I'd love to get the higher grade NebTech, but unfortunately, that's just not in my price point when everything else costs so much on top of it.
So what are you rocking now with in terms of wireless stuff?
So I've got, I have a lot of different wireless systems. I have the Auroras. I have, the Lumen Radio one. I have the Airy one in my back pocket. But what I use mostly is honestly just 2 AKSs routed in through a router. And then that goes, then I connect to that Wi-Fi on that. And I do that a lot because even if I'm not running a full universe, I'll split the universes up and I'll keep all of my Astera stuff on one AKS, and then I'll keep everything else on the other. So that way, if I need to, because the Asteras don't have any outside Timo 2, they're notoriously kind of low on signal, especially if you're talking NICS bulbs. So that gives me the option of either running Ethernet cable off of the router and putting an AKS just right on set, or boosting the CRMX levels up some on one and keeping them standard on the other, so you're not fighting as much.
Right. That's a great thing.
Yeah, so pretty much any setup, I'm always going to run 2 universes unless it's really small. Right. And it's like a run and gun, like if you're doing a car shot or something, I'll just take universe 1 and strap it to the back of the iPad and go in the car. But other than that, usually I'm always having 2.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, the Ratpack AKS is, in my opinion, still the best like single universe transmitter out there, because it's just like, it had the old Timo chip in it, which could go to 250 milliwatt, plus the antennas they claimed went up to like 320 or something crazy. You always got like super strong signal. It didn't mess with anything like the Lumen Radio like FX, or the TX2s, which would just like kill all of camera, every time they'd be like, turn off, So it seemed like it was a ball player, and it definitely was like my bread and butter with Blackout, obviously. I mean, I made Blackout so that the default settings work with the default settings of AKS, so that all you had to do was link up to the Wi-Fi and you were good to go. And that's how we made it work. But I would, I was like the biggest promoter of that thing, because it was like, I would literally use that belt clip. I would clip that right onto my belt with, the iPad, rock around. And for a while, I believe that you could do, pretty much anything except like pixelated things on, one universe. And I would always fit, DMX footprints in so that I could always get into one universe. And it was like never an issue if you planned it out and you coordinated it right. But yeah, and then now lighting has gotten crazy where it's just like even, the smallest little light, like, one of those Aperture MT Pros, has like 32 pixels in 1 foot. You know what I mean? It's like 192 channels. You're like, oh my goodness. So that quickly went out the door. But that's super cool. That's super cool to see. The cart looks great.
I mean, I still to this day, I think, the AKS is the strongest out of any, like the newer Lumen Radio ones that they came out with that are supposedly, are amazing. And they're fine. I think it just took them a while to get the firmware settings to where it needed to be. I know they were having issues for a while with like the European FCC, basically with signal broadcast aspects. And I think that really kind of pigeonholed them so much that they kind of pushed it out before it was really ready. And the thing about AKS, you don't have to worry about that. It's just, it works. It's one of those that just works. There's no questions. You don't have to go to updates. You don't have to do any of that. I mean, the last update for the AKS is probably, 2015, if that, you know what I mean? Like it's just solid. They don't need to change anything. They don't have to overthink it.
Yeah. When you have something that works like that on set, it's just like, you never want to change it. You want to keep it going. It's just like you're tried and true, and it's so trusty. And like to see anything new come along, at this point, you're always just like, can I trust it as much? Like this thing has been with me for 10 years. You know what I mean? So I totally get that like obsession with the tech, but also like I love seeing all the new stuff come out. And for me, I mean, like it's cool to see CRMX2. I wish Lumen Radio didn't lock it down into just them being able to transmit, because I think we'd really see some really cool use cases of it. But it has its place. I think with all of these multi-pixel fixtures and everything, it just, you need more universes. And what's cool, and they need to be wireless because so many things are wireless. And really that's Astera for you, right? I mean, like on your sets, what are like the lights that you're using most of the time that you see, right? I mean, for me, it's like you see Sky Panels still because they still get their long-term rental from the rental house who's bought their 1,000 inventory, whatever they have. So you have to rent those. But, Vortexes, wireless built in, Titan tubes, wireless built in, any other kind of, Astera product, has wireless built in. Luna bulbs, we're using those, or Nix bulbs, or whatever your flavor of that is. And now it's like, okay, Felix lights, we'll see. Kino's had it built in for a long time. They even had it built in some of their earlier models before anyone else really did.
Right.
And it's just like, at this point, you don't really need to tag into anything with an external receiver.
No, it's really rare. The only time I usually ever tag in is if it's something that's very time accurate. Like if it's a gunshot muzzle, or if it's a lightning strike or something like that. Usually then I'll run, and even then I don't have any way to tag in with the AKS buses or anything else like that. So I have like a little DMX King that I'll put on my cart, and then I'll run that, and that'll be my hard patch in DMX that'll go up to that. And then I can hard patch through all that and get exact trigger points if need be. I haven't really noticed as much. I used to get that like 2 to 5 second delay every once in a while on Blackout, on Luminaire, on like all these things. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's a lot to do with Apple's updating and securing more with the Wi-Fi connections, but I haven't really got that CRMX delay that you used to get like 10 years ago,
I don't think that was ever a CRMX delay. I think that was always the Wi-Fi. And I think that has been an evolution. And there's a lot of things that, like, as we develop the app, like just to go from iOS 14 to 15 to 16 to 17, now at 18, they make major changes that they don't tell you about. And they'll just break stuff. And I remember going from, I think it was iOS 15 to iOS 16 was the hardest transition for Blackout possible. And we had people.
I stayed on 15 for a very long time because it was just like, well, you're like, this one, it's gonna guys, just like it works, but like maybe think, well, and I'm like, no, I'm not touching it yet. Oh wait, let me know. And then you finally came out and you're like, no, now it's good. Trust me, guys, this is it. Like we're ready now.
Yeah, that was rough. I mean, it's just crazy to think about that. Like Blackout would hold your iPad hostage for that, but I mean, that's what people would do, is like they would just buy an iPad strictly for Blackout, and that's wild to me, because when I first started, I had that vision, but to like hear of people doing it and seeing it, it's kind of cool. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I have those 2 iPads there. The iPad Pro it's an older iPad Pro. I feel like I've got to upgrade, but I'm also just like, I know there's going to be another one that comes out, and you're just like,
every year,
So, but that one has been, that's solely lighting control and lighting apps, and then the iPad Mini is solely basically, I use it for Astera, and then I use it for lighting diagrams. So I can build out lighting diagrams, which I'm going to hopefully start to transition that a little bit more over to Live Plot when I wrap my head a little bit more around that, because I'm so used to like having my catalog of fixtures and being able to put them in their spots, they look like them and everything else like that.
Okay, so Chris, obviously we're here also to talk about this crazy win for Anora. How did you get hooked up with that film? What did you end up, doing, and how did you utilize Blackout on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really surreal. It's the little movie that could, and there's a lot of paths that kind of led me into Anora. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I was working on a film called Beach Bum, a Harmony Korine film with Benoit as the cinematographer. And we had just finished that up. And then right after that, there was a film coming into town, a small A24 film. And they had gotten my name from Beach Bum, and then from Benoit and from Jim Priscrelli, who had gaffed Beach Bum, that I was like doing lighting tech for him and everything else like that. And so we sat down and we had an interview, and that was with Drew Daniels, who ended up filming Anora. And that was a small film called Waves that what I thought was amazing film. It's still probably one of my favorite films that I've ever done. Just lighting wise, story wise, everything else like that. Drew was amazing to work with. I felt like we hit it off great. If he's watching this, I hope that he feels the same way. But anyway, after that, pretty much right after that, I had gotten a call.
Wait, what were you doing on that film though? You were
on Waves. I was a gaffer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On Waves, I was the gaffer. And then right after that film, I had gotten a call for this like tiny, I don't think it was a thesis film, but she had just graduated college and she was putting together her first feature. And I had like a little bit of a gap between when Waves ended and when this film Zola, another A24 film, started. So I was like, I'm down to help. Like, can you do a little bit of my gear to kind of make up for the lower rate? They're like, absolutely. So I went on to that, and it was like 3 weeks, and it was really no money, but we stayed, even though there was like other calls. And then Alex Coco, who produced Anora, ended up being the producer on that movie. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I met him and had that connection. So I had a connection with Drew, and I had this connection with Alex Coco. And then fast forward to basically COVID hit, the pandemic hit, and work's kind of stopped everywhere. There's nothing going on, and you're just kind of sitting around. And then I get a phone call from Drew saying like, hey man, would you want to come do this like ultra low little indie in Texas? And I was like, absolutely, because I'm not doing anything. The only thing going on in Florida was like some really kind of sketchy reggaeton videos that weren't really following any kind of COVID guidelines or anything else like that. And then, so I'm like, absolutely. So I'm excited. I'm getting ready to pack up all my stuff. And I get a call back from Drew, and he's like, man, they're kind of pushing back. They're saying like, why are we going to pay for somebody from Florida to drive up here when there's got to be somebody in Texas you can use. And then in the back, I hear like, is that Chris Hill from Florida? And Drew's like, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, definitely bring him. And it was Alex Coco ended up producing that film. So that was Red Rocket. So that was also the first time I ended up working with Sean Baker. Okay. So we did that for, I think that was like a $500,000 budget, I want to say, but maybe a little bit more.
Wow.
And I was the entire G&E crew, and it was like 14 people, I think, total on that whole job.
Wow.
Doing everything.
Yeah.
And so then whenever it came time for Anora, I got the call from Drew, and I was like, absolutely. Like I would go back into battle with those groups of people at any point in time, you know. And that was the thing with working with like Sean and Drew and Alex Coco and Samantha Kwan, who also produces, is like very much like a dream, because they're so committed to the story and the creation, and not about necessarily the nuances of this, or, oh, we got to make it flashy this way, or we got to do it this way. And Drew himself is very much like, he's very aware and cognizant of the actors and what they need to be able to create without like impeding their space. So a lot of times we would light, you know, rooms as opposed to spots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and a lot of times that's also just taking away light, you know, blacking out ceilings, doing stuff like that. So that way these actors have the motion and understanding that they can feel comfortable creating in that space and not feel like, oh, I got to make sure I hit the spot, or like the chimera is right in front of me, or anything else like that. So being able to work that way was really great. And it's really interesting because I didn't feel like that happens that often.
Yeah.
I feel like everything is very mechanical. Like the bigger the budget you get, everything is micromanaged and very mechanical. So to work with people that are very organic in that way is like a really big like blessing and like awesome to do.
When you get with a good group of people, and that's like what transcends like this business, I feel like.
True.
It's like you're working with your friends, you have a great time, and you're creating art which like, you know, lives on. It's not like you're, you know, some cog in a machine that's doing something. It's just like, dude, like we made this thing that you can like go and experience, and it's like so cool. And like I think that's what's always drawing about film, is like this visual medium that like takes the efforts of like so many different talents and like combines them into like one thing. And it's like you can look back at your whole history, your whole IMDb, and be like, that's all stuff that you can like watch and you have like record of, and that's cool. And like I don't think a lot of professions necessarily have that, you know.
Yeah. And I do a lot, like I have a tendency, like my perfect year is always doing like one bigger film or TV show that takes up like 4 to 6 months of the year. I get all my health insurance, I get everything else like that. And then the rest of the year is usually me trying to travel to do these little like $1 million movies here, or $500,000 there, or sometimes like up to 6 million, and have that ability to create, like to make something that's like a story that's everybody that's there is really excited to tell.
When you got into the mindset of Anora and you're like, okay, this is going to be a colorful film, what did you have in your back pocket? How did you decide to approach it in terms of lighting control?
Yeah, I mean, I had my van packed to the gills with all my stuff, and I drove up from Florida. We didn't have really any big guns. We only had a generator for select days. So from the local rental house, I think I had 2 M18s and maybe one 4K with a 7K putt-putt. What we used a lot of were, I had a couple Vortexes. I had some older digital Sputnik stuff that I still really love to use as like little hit lights for exteriors and everything, because they don't look like film lights. They're still like, I think the only fixture I've got in the arsenal that doesn't look like a movie light.
Like DS1s? You're talking about
those DS1s,
yeah.
And then our main 2 heavy hitters were the ProLight 675 with the Fresnel, which I still think is the best Fresnel that's been put on an LED. So, you know, shout out to Mitch Gross for that, because that fixture still is a phenomenal light. And then I also had what we called the Dragon of Chaos, which is a Kino Celeb 850.
Okay.
On a low combo.
Okay.
With the Matthews big wheels. And then the 4x6 Chimera on top of that. And then stuffing from a couch draped on top of that. So basically we would shoot our wides, and then once we came in for the closest, we'd get rid of all that stuff. We can come in and we just wheel in the Dragon of Chaos, and it feels like this big, huge, soft, beautiful source.
Super soft source.
And it's only 2.5 feet wide, I think, from the front of that to there. So normally what you would do with, 2 or 3 vortexes and a book bounce and all this stuff that takes up a ton of room, we can get away with on a way smaller footprint, which is really necessary on these smaller films, because you're not going to have that space. Yeah. So those were kind of the go-tos. And then when it came to the wireless and it came to the ability to call out lights and stuff like that, I tend to like to do this, especially with people like Sean and Drew, is I don't have a lot of crew on set. Yeah. Because I feel like it's like seeing a lot of people like overtop you with lights and all this like a different face all the time is really hard for actors. It's really hard for people to like kind of stay focused on what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah. So I had a great team. I had April Goldberg and my third electric name was Jonas, and they were phenomenal and they were great. But a lot of times what I would have is I would just be like, guys, I'm going to need this luster 2. Can you bring it up here with a 19-degree barrel? We're just inside the set. And so they would have it all set up right outside the set. They throw a antenna on it from my cart and ready to go. And then I'd go in and do like a final tweak with it, and I'd go back to my cart. And then on my cart, I'd always have a set of comms. So Drew and I would always be on comms together because we didn't have a lot of rehearsals. We didn't have a real stand-in for that aspect. So a lot of times we're tweaking on that first take. Right. So the ability to have that cart just right next to him or just right offset and be able to just kind of adjust the levels ever so slightly as we're making those moves and create that environment that the actors weren't feeling like it's a movie set. Like it's like there's lights everywhere. There's people coming in and out all the time. It's noisy. We were able to keep it really confined and quiet. And I think that's a great way to do like those smaller films.
And you're right next to the DIT. His cart.
Yeah, but I mean that we didn't have a DIT because we were shooting 35 millimeter.
Of course. Yeah.
So I still had my.
You had Video Village.
We had a Video Village, but I was never by Video Village. I was like closer to set.
Or I mean, like, what did he use for his? Was he on the camera or?
I mean, on the camera. Yeah, he was operating.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's why he would be on the comms and everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Sean would have his 7-inch.
Right.
And we went that way with a lot of it. That was the majority of the film was just us being able to communicate quietly. So that way we can make sure that Sean has the ability to talk to the actors without feeling overwhelmed. And there wasn't a big footprint of people and gear.
I was going to say, like on digital films, it's like now the lighting cart has migrated to being right next to the DIT. So it's like, at least we've moved the programmer out of the room and now they're on a cart, at least by the DIT. And what's cool about that is it's just like you're doing your grading on set as that's been the workflow for a while, but now you're also doing the actual like lighting, grading itself, as a nice contrast or complement to the grading on set. And I think that's kind of the workflow that really makes that process seamless and efficient.
Yeah. And I kind of, I was by DIT during like Bad Monkey and stuff like that. But then I bought the DJI wireless system. So I'd have my own wireless control.
Oh, nice.
That way they didn't have to worry about anything else. And I always just hook that up to DIT. Yeah. And then I have an old Odyssey 7 that still does the point IRE.
Oh, yeah.
You can set where you want the IRE. And then I can find from that point, kind of do my own EL zone type thing where I know like, this is where we're keeping our skin tones at. And I can kind of make sure that I see where we're at and make sure that we're staying in the same world that we set up to start with.
But I mean, like you have a lot of locations in this film, right? You have the strip club, HQ, right? Headquarters, like Vegas, there's New York, Long Island, there's Coney Island and the boardwalk. There's the candy shop, which I guess is there, but I mean, was that on the boardwalk or was that a separate stage or?
No, everything was location. The only thing we had was stage was the private jet.
Okay.
And originally we had talked about filming on the jet from New York to like just renting a jet and filming it from New York to Vegas. But logically, I don't think that worked out.
Yeah. Once you realize it, you're like, oh, we have to bring this person, and then it adds up, and then it's like, where are you going to put all this stuff? And yeah, I totally get that.
Well, and we had to have a stage because in order to get the tax incentive, you have to have a stage day in New York.
Right. And then you also had, like, obviously the mansion, and you had a couple other club scenes that had, like, moving lights in it and stuff. Did you also run those off of Blackout, or was that a house system?
I did, and it was a choice that we made to be able to save a little bit of money and be able to get like another moving light. Was to say, okay, Drew, this is going to take me a while. I've got to do basically 15 steps and have it play through the steps to make it do a figure eight.
Right.
And I said, so we got to kind of make a choice. And if we need to do adjustments, it's not as simple as like a quick thing. It's going to take me like 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
And he was like, let's do it. I think it's more important that we have like 2 of them than just only having the one and having a board. So that's how we did it. And it was a very tedious process. But in the end, it definitely worked. I can't wait till you get the draw ability on Blackout for moving lights. Like that's going to be amazing. But I know you just did OSC, right? So you could technically use like remotes, like controllers, if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could. And we also have like in effects, I don't know if you know this, it's kind of like it was thrown in there a little bit subtly, but we have relative positioning. So you could at least easily do like a circle now, because you could do like, okay, plus and minus 20%, on the pan, plus and minus 20% on the tilt, and now you have like a circle going or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we have really to build out in Blackout, I mean, there's a ton of things that I see and know where we want to go, but definitely is to have a moving light effects engine in there and to be able to incorporate more moving lights. But, when I started, it was like, I was like specifically, I just need to make this work with like film fixtures. And we weren't really doing moving lights on the majority of film productions at that time, when I had started Blackout. And so now it's standard.
Well, now every Condor has at least 1, if not 2 moving lights on it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So the moving light, we definitely was like, I think it was 16 steps.
Wow.
That I built it in. And then, so we had 2 of those on tower trusses. And then I had April and Jonas on Licos doing and then I had Asteras up in the ceiling, and I had AX5s on the ground, and we replaced every globe that was in the place with like lower wattage ones. Or actually, no, sorry, higher wattage ones. And yeah, and then that was crazy because we had to come back to headquarters 3 times because we could only afford to shoot them on the down days. We couldn't afford to have them closed.
Right.
So we'd have to reestablish it like 2 to 3 times.
Holy smokes.
That's crazy. Dude, epic job. I mean, to make a whole figure 8 happen in Blackout, that's awesome. Props to you. Mad programming skills. Any advice for upcoming gaffers and programmers?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things that I always kind of try to stick to is always make an effort to understand what you're trying to create, as opposed to just going by like the numbers and kind of phoning it in and be like, oh, let's relying on someone else to tell you why you're doing what you're doing. Like, I think that's good in life, but also especially in work, is trying to understand like why you're doing what you're doing. Like, why are you using a soft light over a hard light? Why are you using a certain color or a CCT of something? I feel like a lot of emotion in films is conveyed through lighting, and it doesn't really get the play that it should with a lot of people. And I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh, a key, a back, and a fill light, and you're good.
Yeah.
But I think a lot, like, can be learned just by knowing why you're doing what you're doing in that aspect. And then, I mean, like, it sounds super stupid, but just like always keep learning. Like, I mean, like, it's so easy nowadays with YouTube, with videos that you guys are making, with everybody else. There's a new fixture out every week. It can be exhausting, but like just keeping up on a lot of that stuff can put you ahead of the curve of probably 80% of the people out there.
Yeah.
That just phone it. Like, they're just like, okay,
Yeah.
I know I finally learned how to use the Sky panel, and then I'm good.
Yeah.
And then I guess lastly, I think a big thing is like, finish what you started. If you're in a department head position, I think it's really imperative to commit yourself to those people and not like jump midway through or anything else like that. And like, I honestly wouldn't have probably, I mean, maybe I would have, but I probably wouldn't have gotten Anora had I jumped from that small little movie that Alex Cuoco was producing, because he wouldn't have necessarily fought for me to go out to Texas with Drew for Red Rocket. So I think the thing is just like, you never know where that's going to go.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty important aspect of, just your commitment to the job.
Yeah.
Is like, if you're going to be there in that position, because they really, I think a DP and a director really rely on their department heads more than they'll ever kind of say out loud.
Chris, so you also run a nonprofit. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I have a nonprofit film society called the Dead Media Society, and I started it a little over a year ago. It was right at the heels of the actors and writers strike. I noticed that kind of one of the unseen victims of the strike was older films, like not as popular, like not Marvel movies, everything else like that, were disappearing off of streaming platforms because they knew they were going to have to pay higher royalties and pay higher rights. So if they weren't making the money, they just swept them under the rug. As well as at the exact same time, Best Buy, Target, all those places announced that they're no longer selling Blu-rays or DVDs. So it got to a point that I realized that this whole next like segment of life was going to be all these films were going to get lost. And so I made a point, I started in my backyard just doing double features every month where we show like rare, hard to find films, films that have kind of gotten lost. And then in between the films, we do interviews with the directors or the cast or the cinematographers, and kind of give you a little bit more of the insight on what it took for them to make it, and give people a chance to see it. So hopefully, they can remember it and it doesn't just disappear.
That's super cool. Wow.
Chris, anything else? I mean, like, dude, it's been great talking to you.
No, I'm excited for the Navigator. I told Ian, if I won an Oscar, you got to give me a Navigator.
Oh, really?
I was like, come on, if we won Best Picture.
We definitely have some really cool, I think, exciting things in the pipeline. So we have our sights on a lot of different things. We're trying to rein it in to really, provide you guys with everything you guys are doing and pushing the app. And it's super exciting to see people like you, like, really taking it in full stride and using it as part of your on-set workflow. I mean, that was the dream that I had, was just that, like, lighting control can be fun, and lighting control can be like seamless with how you can, interact on set, not offset in some corner, sitting behind a board, white gloving it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the thing that's amazing is that it's really kind of come up from being like, okay, this is what you use on a Splinter package or on a little indie movie, to doing like full, like I said, like Bad Monkey was done 90% on Blackout. We're getting ready to start a new TV show down here called MIA, and it's going to be the same way. It'll be 90% Blackout and 10% when we're at the stage. We'll have an EOS board at the stage for that.
Chris, hey, dude, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you for sharing your story. I mean, it's super exciting. Let's obviously keep in touch, and yeah.